Hello again. Tonight we're not visiting candlelit banquets or warm castle halls. We're heading somewhere colder, rougher, into the bone-deep chill of a true medieval winter. No knights, no glory. Just simple folk doing their best to make it through endless nights. Biting cold, and the quiet kind of hunger that never really fades. Snow seeps through the thatch. Bread hardens into weapons. Wolves draw closer, and every day you rise and you do it all again. If this kind of slow, textured history helps ease your mind, consider liking or subscribing, but only if it genuinely brings you a little calm. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is. There's something oddly soothing about knowing someone else is out there, listening in the dark, so lower the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that steady background hush. Pull on something cozy. And let's head into a season that didn't just push people to their limits. It tried to break them. You didn't need a date to tell you when winter started. You felt it first in your bones. They stiffened like old bread. Then in the sky, which shifted from bright blue to a hesitant kind of grey. Then in the animals, quiet, watchful, like they'd heard a rumour you hadn't. They always know. Autumn doesn't end so much as it slowly backs away. The leaves drop, yes, but it's more than that. The wind changes tone. It slips through the cracks in your cottage, nosing around like an unwanted guest, finding every warm corner and stealing it. The chickens stop fussing. The dog, once bold, stops barking at the gusts and starts listening instead. That's when you know. The sun, when it even bothers to show, feels distant, like it forgot how to warm anything, and people start walking faster. Not from urgency, but because standing still hurts now. There's no dramatic entrance. Winter comes like a silent debt collector, unannounced but impossible to ignore. The first reaction? Denial. You act like it's just a passing chill. You wear your October tunic, only now with a cloak that's more whole than cloth. You promise yourself you'll repair it. You won't. Not because you're lazy, because your fingers are too frozen to thread the needle, and the thread's gone anyway. We like to talk about preparing for winter like we were ever truly ready. But the truth is, winter usually arrives before we've wrapped up autumn. There's always one more leak in the roof you meant to patch, one more stack of firewood left unchopped, something in the garden that didn't get dried, brined, or buried in salt fast enough. Still, you do what you can. You jam straw into the wall gaps, you hang rags over doorways, you move the beds closer to the hearth so everyone can share whatever warmth escapes the fire. Even Uncle Gain gets a spot, even though he smells like wet wool and mumbles about debts no one can remember. You don't burn wood all day, that's a dream. Fires are for evenings, for dinner, and that precious hour when people pretend things are fine. The rest of the time, you stay warm through motion, layers, and the collective body heat of too many siblings huddled under a blanket that feels like it's made of hay and regret. The animals catch on too. They stick closer to shelter. The chickens stop wandering. The pigs grow still, which is frankly unnerving. The cows become cranky, or rather they stay the exact same. Outside, the earth turns uncooperative. Yesterday's muddy paths are now traps, half-frozen ridges that twist ankles and gobble up boots. Water in the bucket grows a crust of ice. Every morning you crack it with a ladle, then hiss as the cold numbs your hands through to the bone. And the sky? It just looms, dull, low, heavy, like it's waiting for something bad to happen. You squint at it, trying to guess what's coming, as if clouds have secrets. They don't. But they do mean you won't see proper sunlight for weeks. In the village, people move faster, speak less. Laughter fades. Even the sermons shift in tone. The priest, wrapped in wool and judgment, reminds you that suffering builds character, that God sends cold weather to teach humility. And you wonder, quietly, if God's lesson plan might benefit from a slight revision. Then one morning it happens. Snow. Not a storm, not yet. Just a thin veil like the fields have been dusted in flour. But everything changes. The thatch goes pale, trees stand stiff as bone, every breath turns into fog, and the ground begins to crunch beneath your feet like old paper. And just like that it hits you. You're sealed in. The land has closed its doors. No digging, no planting, nothing new will grow. Whatever you've stored is now all that stands between you and starvation. If you didn't store enough, well, you're about to discover just how creative a person can get with a single turnip. From now on, time isn't measured in days, it's counted in dwindling supplies. How many bundles of firewood are left? How many sacks of barley? How many eggs this week? Spoiler, not many. The hens stop laying when it gets cold. They've got survival on their minds, same as you. They'd rather huddle by the hearth than contribute breakfast. You keep your hands busy, even if none of it feels like progress. You patch holes in tunics, scrub out soot, stir the ashes, hoping there's still a glowing coal hiding under all that grey. And when there's time, and there is, you spin wool. Not just to make thread, but to give your fingers something to do, to keep your thoughts from wandering into darker places. Silence is dangerous. Stillness even more so. The animals? They're not pets. They're flatmates. The warm ones get invited in. Not all at once. You have boundaries, but enough to turn your home into a living stew of breath, fur, and mutual tolerance. You get used to waking up with a goat snoring on your leg. Well, maybe not used to it. But you stop bothering to protest. The nights are hardest. The sun disappears early, like it's given up, and darkness comes in angry. Candles are a luxury. Tallow lamps belch smoke. You sit near the fire if it's going and listen. To stories, to wind, to the way the firewood cracks and sighs. Every so often someone decides it's time for a ghost story, which seems like a good idea, right up until you have to cross the frozen yard to visit the privy. At that point, it's a sprint. You don't trip. You definitely don't look at the shadows, and you pretend you're not being watched. Still, winter isn't pure misery. There's a rhythm to it, a bitter sort of pattern. The chores are the same, the rules are clear, and there's a strange comfort in knowing that everyone else is equally cold, equally hungry, equally over it. You find joy where you can. 5 whole minutes with warm feet. A stew that tastes less like failure. A day when the wind doesn't sneak through every crack in the wall. Victories are small and quiet, because if you laugh too loud, someone will remind you it's only just begun. Historically, winters weren't kind to peasants. Starting in the 1300s, Europe slipped into a kind of mini ice age. Longer, colder winters. Rivers froze solid. Crops didn't make it. In some years, like 1315 through 1317, the rains came and stayed, drowning fields and ruining harvests for seasons on end. It wasn't just chilly. It was famine. Real famine. Tens of millions went hungry, and when food runs out, desperation follows. Cannibalism gets whispered about. Infanticide too. Not dinner table topics, but then again, dinner wasn't always on the table. That's the thing about winter. It's not just about outlasting the cold, it's about surviving everyone else stuck inside with you. 1 room, 6 people, a handful of animals, a bucket of fish that smells worse every week. No doors, no silence, no space. You hear every breath, every argument, every suspicious stomach noise. Privacy, gone. Modesty, that left with the sun. You try not to argue, not out of patience, but because yelling stirs up the air and lets in more cold. So you shrink your world down to the fire and hope no one snaps. Eventually you stop asking when winter will end. It's not useful. You just wake up, do what needs doing, and hope the roof holds another day. If you're lucky, the firewood lasts. If you're really lucky, no one starts eyeing the furniture like it owes them calories. Because a medieval winter doesn't knock. It doesn't wait to be invited. It walks in, puts its feet up, and demands everything from you. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Winter doesn't just wear you down with cold, it buries you in labour. And at the top of that endless list of chores, wood. Not a few sticks for ambience. You need enough to keep the fire alive every day, every night. Fire is life. It boils your soup, dries your clothes, wards off rats, and makes the house tolerable. Without it, you're not just cold, you're a frozen taxpayer waiting to be buried. But fires don't start themselves. You need wood, loads of it. That means cutting, splitting, dragging, stacking, and cursing. A lot of cursing. Gathering firewood is a second full-time job, except this one pays in frostbite and back pain. There's no chainsaw, no tools with engines, just an axe that's older than your grandmother's ghost. The handle is splintered, the blade is dull, but it's still your best shot, until it gets stuck and you're down on your knees prying it out with your hands in pure desperation. You start early, everyone says that. Cut in autumn, except autumn runs out before you do. The harvest goes long, your neighbour won't give the axe back, and then there was that time you twisted your ankle running from a goose with anger issues. So now it's December, and you're swinging an axe at a tree like it owes you money, praying it doesn't fall the wrong way. And trees, as it turns out, are heavy, uncooperative, and usually covered in snow. You bring one down and then remember, it's not over. You still have to chop it, then drag it, then stack it. Repeat this 50 times. If you're lucky, your back just aches. If you're not, the tree lands on you and suddenly you're a lesson in what not to do. Once it's chopped, it needs time to dry, which, inconveniently, takes months. So instead, you burn it wet. It hisses, smokes, barely burns, and turns your home into a cold, smoky cave of half-hearted flame and full-throated wheezing. The wealthy, naturally, don't deal with this. They have servants. They have storerooms full of perfectly seasoned logs. While they sip wine in front of a roaring fire, you are the servant, and your hearth is just a pile of damp sticks praying for ignition. And don't think you can just gather wood wherever you like. Forests are owned by lords, by the church, by anyone but you. Get caught collecting so much as a fallen branch on noble land, and you could be fined, whipped, or dragged out to make an example of. For picking up a stick, really. That's why a lot of peasants turn to alternatives. Peat, dried manure, bundles of brush. Technically they burn. Technically. Peat gives off heat, yes, but also a smell like wet ashes and sadness. Cow dung? Surprisingly effective. Still, no one's thrilled about it. But you use what you've got. You go out with frozen fingers, gather frozen patties, and pretend you're not inhaling last summer's memories. The upside? It's free. The downside? Your home now smells like someone set fire to a barn and then decided to live in it. Stacking firewood is its own kind of art. Stack it too tight, and it moulds. Too loose, and it topples, usually onto your foot. So you build your pile carefully, leaning it against the side of the house, wrap it in stolen cloth or rotting canvas, and pray it survives the next snowstorm. Spoiler, it won't. And no matter how much you chop, it's never enough. That's winter's golden rule. February rolls around and suddenly the fence looks flammable. Old chairs become kindling. Sentimentality burns just fine. You start dreaming about firewood. You count logs instead of sheep. You accuse your siblings of using the good stick too early. You ration embers. You guard coals like treasure. And if you find a nice dry branch buried under the snow, you carry it home like you've just won a battle. Because in a way, you have. Sleeping through winter is a gamble. If the fire goes out, the temperature inside drops fast, straight to hope you updated your will. So you pile on every blanket, every coat, every body. Not for love, for survival. Some nights the livestock sleep inside too, not out of affection but out of necessity. Chickens offer eggs and a bit of warmth. Pigs are walking space heaters. Cows, they're like a giant furnace that moos and occasionally drools on your foot. It's not cosy, it's loud, it stinks, and it feels like you're camping in a barn that lost a bet. But it beats freezing. Historically, it wasn't just individual effort keeping everyone warm. Villages often worked together, not because they liked each other, but because everyone hated freezing. People would chop and haul firewood as a group, not for bonding but for shared misery. Everyone was cold, everyone had splinters, everyone was equally exhausted, and that made it bearable, sort of. Some places even came up with clever ways to save fuel. Shared ovens, communal fires. You'd take turns baking bread at the village oven, all while pretending not to notice how Agnes's house always seemed suspiciously warmer than yours. Children and women collected kindling, not because it was easier, but because that's how the labour was split. If you were small and had working fingers, off you went with a basket and vague instructions to return with something burnable. Sometimes that meant twigs, sometimes pine cones. Either way it counted. And then there's the chopping itself, a special kind of medieval punishment. Your gloves, if you own any, soak through in minutes. Your fingers go numb. The axe glances off the log and bites your shin. You yell. Not because it helps, but because it's the only thing you've got left. By the middle of winter, the ground's too frozen to chop into, and your hands look less like skin and more like splinter magnets. You still haven't figured out why half the woodpile vanished overnight. Spoiler, your neighbour borrowed it again. But you keep swinging, because there's no backup plan. Fire isn't optional. It's the dividing line between getting to spring or turning into a cautionary tale. When you finally sit by the fire at night, sore, smoky and half frozen, you feel something that isn't quite peace, not comfort, just the absence of immediate doom. And honestly, that's about as good as it gets. Of course, some winters outdo themselves. The really bad ones earn names. The winter the roof caved in. The freeze that turned the river to stone. People tried ice skating on it, with wooden shoes. Some didn't make it. A few simply left and never returned. And after a while you stop asking questions. The firewood dwindles. The wind starts howling. You catch yourself staring at the old table like it's got potential. That stool you always hated, suddenly it's looking flammable. Survival has no room for sentiment. If it burns, it's useful. Eventually spring will creep back in. The snow will slink away like a thief after a long night. Mud will take its place, eager to steal your boots. But you'll have made it. You'll have survived another winter. No medals, no celebration. Just smoke-stained clothes, numb fingers, and the proud, stubborn knowledge that you didn't freeze. Not this year, and the next morning, you start it all over again. Because even when spring's around the corner, the cold still clings, the chores never stop, and the fire, your needy, crackling little deity, always wants more, and you give it more wood, more sweat, more of yourself, because survival doesn't come cheap, not in winter. Comfort isn't the goal, endurance is. You keep going, one splinter at a time, and tomorrow, same as today, chop, stack, burn, freeze, repeat. You don't defeat winter, you endure it, and if you're lucky, next year the axe breaks after your spirit does, not the other way around. Because the cold doesn't care how exhausted you are, the logs won't split themselves, the fire won't stoke itself, and warmth, that rare and fleeting miracle, has to be earned every single day. You don't need a calendar to know it's winter. Your stomach tells you first, loudly, constantly. It's not the modern kind of hunger, a polite reminder to check the fridge. It's the kind that gnaws, that makes you eye bark and wonder, can I boil that? Food in a medieval winter is like firewood, scarce, difficult to come by, and a source of regular arguments. You don't plan meals, you stretch them. You look at 3 wrinkled turnips and call it a feast. You start with whatever's been stored. Barley, rye, oats, wheat, if you're either rich or bold enough to steal from someone who is. Some days the cold feels different, less like weather, more like a mood. It slips into your joints, settles behind your eyes. You forget what warm feels like. Your memories of summer start to feel suspicious, like stories someone else told you. The idea of soft grass, sun on skin, bare feet in a stream, it sounds made up. Like a dream you once had but can't prove was real. That's the worst part. Not the cold itself, but the way it steals the past. Until the only thing you really trust is the next task, the next chore, the next hour survived. And winter doesn't do drama. It doesn't need to. No big storms, no howling winds, just this steady, quiet grind. Days blur. Everything slows, even your thoughts. You start repeating yourself, telling the same story twice, forgetting whether you fed the chickens, then feeding them again just in case. Some call it survival, others a slow unravelling. The line between the two, honestly, it's hard to see from here, but you keep going. Because that's the rule. When in doubt, keep going. You learn things in winter, whether you want to or not, like which neighbour snores loudest through the wall, how long you can wear the same pair of socks before they rebel, how much stew you can stretch from a single onion and a prayer. You learn patience, or maybe you just lose the energy for urgency. Either way, you sit more, speak less, and listen. Not for anything special, just to notice what hasn't frozen yet. At night the cold sharpens, the walls groan like old bones. The wind tests every crack, every knot in the wood. You lie there, wrapped in everything you own, listening. Not for danger, just anything. A distant owl, the soft collapse of snow off a thatched roof, the pop of sap in the firewood. You learn the language of silence. It's not empty, it just speaks slower, and you wait, hoping morning still remembers where to find you. Dreams get strange in the cold. Time stretches, faces blur. You wake confused, unsure if the fire burned out or if the dream just ended. Sometimes you dream of green, of movement, a stream cutting through moss, birdsong, the things you don't see anymore. And for a moment, just before your eyes open, you feel warm, not physically, but in some old, half-buried corner of your mind. It always fades, but you chase it. Even in dreams, you chase it. You wake before the light, not because you want to, because you have to. The warmth of sleep is a luxury you can't afford to hold on to. The hearth is embers now, barely glowing. You move quickly, quietly. Cold bites harder in the morning. You feel it in your teeth, in your nails, in your ribs. You feed the fire, 1 breath, 2, it catches. There's a rhythm to survival, a ritual. Wood, fire, water, bread, one after the other, like a prayer with no words. Outside, the skies are dull steel. The trees stand motionless, as if even they are reluctant to move. Your boots crunch down on the frozen earth as you carry the slop bucket to the edge of the yard. A crow watches you from a crooked post, its feathers puffed against the cold just like you. You nod at it. It doesn't nod back. On the way back in, you glance toward the woods, deep and unwelcoming. They've always been that way, but in winter they turn hostile. The kind of quiet in there doesn't feel like peace. It feels like warning. You don't go in alone, not anymore. Eventually the hunger shifts. At first it's sharp, an edge in your belly that growls and aches. But over time, it dulls. It becomes background noise. You stop dreaming of feasts and start fantasizing about boiled roots or the crust of someone else's bread. Anything with salt becomes mythical. Even your nose starts playing tricks, swearing it smells stew when there's only smoke and damp wool. You chew slower, not to savour, but to convince your stomach it's more than it is. That's when stories return. Not the happy kind, those are for spring. Winter stories are darker, stranger, told in low voices over low flames. Warnings wrapped in parables, witches in the woods, hungry beasts in the snow, ghosts that tap at the shutters. You don't tell them for fun. You tell them because they feel true. Because sometimes the cold scratches at the door like it wants to come inside, and you need to believe there's something out there worse than frostbite. And yet, there's something beautiful in the stillness. When the wind dies down and the fire holds and everyone is finally asleep, you get a minute. 1 breath of quiet. You can hear the snow shifting on the roof, the pop of a log settling in the hearth. The house creaks like it's dreaming, and for once your thoughts don't race. You just exist, wrapped in wool, bone-tired, heart-beaten slow. It's not joy, but it's enough. The cold teaches you things nothing else can, not through words, through the body, through pain, through endurance, through silence. You learn what matters when comfort is gone. You learn how to move less, talk less, feel less, just to conserve heat. Every gesture costs something, a smile even, and so they become rare, precious. You start noticing small kindnesses, the way someone shifts to make space near the fire, the way they offer you the end of the bread without a word. It's not charity, it's survival, it's community drawn tight around a dwindling flame. Time stretches out in the cold. A day feels like 3. Sleep never comes easy, and when it does, it comes with strange dreams. Your mind pulling up summer memories to warm you, mixing them with fear. And when you wake, you're colder than before. The kind of cold that sinks in and doesn't leave, that makes your joints ache and your breath feel sharp in your chest. But still, you get up. Because you have to. Because if you don't, you won't get up tomorrow. Sometimes someone breaks. It starts small. A missed chore, a forgotten word, then a look that lingers too long at the door. People start talking less, or talking too much, laughing too loud at nothing, crying for no reason. Everyone pretends not to notice, because they might be next. You don't blame them. Everyone's stretched thin, brittle as icicles. You start to understand why stories talk about madness in the snow, how the white outside can feel like a blank page just waiting for something dark to write itself into it. And when someone finally snaps, packs up quietly and walks into the trees, you don't chase them. You watch. You stand in the doorway with the others, silent. Not out of cruelty, out of knowing. Out there, it's death. In here, it's barely life, but still life. You hope they make it somewhere. You hope they turn around, but they rarely do. The snow swallows footsteps fast, and by the next morning, it's like they were never there. You start making bargains with the silence. Not aloud, not really, just inside. You think, if I can make it through one more morning without frostbite, I'll believe there's still something good left in the world. You tell yourself things like that. Little bets. You stack them like firewood. Hope in small units. You don't dare ask for too much at once. There's a rhythm to the days now. Not comforting, but known. Wake up, feed the fire, check the traps, melt snow, breathe slow, speak only when needed. Every action has weight. The old world slips further away. You forget what a full fridge feels like, or a hot shower, or how a door sounds when it closes gently. Here, everything shuts hard, bangs loud, echoes sharp, no music but wind, no news but the sound of birds, if there are any. You dream of cities sometimes, not just the places but the smells, exhaust, wet pavement, coffee shops, even crowds. You used to hate crowds. Now you'd give anything to be annoyed by a stranger again. It feels like remembering someone else's life. The days don't get shorter, but the light feels thin, like it's not really trying anymore, like even the sun's tired. It shows up late, leaves early, barely says a word. You measure time by firewood, how fast the pile shrinks, how long it takes to boil water, how many candles are left. You stop thinking in months. You think in nights survived. Sometimes you laugh, not because anything's funny, just because it's absurd, all of it. The way you're still here, the way your breath fogs and disappears like it never mattered. You laugh, and someone else laughs with you, and then suddenly it feels like a rebellion, like proof. We're still here. We're still warm enough to laugh, for now. You don't know how much longer it has to last. No one does. But when you look around at the others, bundled and quiet, you feel something like loyalty. Or maybe it's just the kind of love that forms when everyone's cold together and no one leaves. Either way, it holds. You stop asking if this is temporary. That question fades, becomes useless. You live like this is it now, because it is. Because pretending otherwise only makes it worse. The mind adapts faster than you'd think. Not happily, but fully. Your old life becomes a story you once read. The kind with bright colours and too many details. You're not sure which parts were real anymore. Did you really have a favourite diner? Did your phone really buzz every few minutes? It feels like fiction. Soft fiction. Too soft for this. You catch yourself craving things that don't make sense. Ice in a glass, a click of a seatbelt, the smell of shampoo. Stupid stuff. Specific stuff. And when you feel that ache, because that's what it is, an ache, you don't say it out loud. No one does. There's a shared silence about the before, like it would hurt more to name it, like it would crack something open. There's comfort in routines now, even if they're brutal. Chop, boil, check, repair, rest, repeat. The rhythm hurts less than the stillness. Stillness lets your mind wander, and wandering is dangerous. You keep it close, you keep it quiet. At night you listen to the walls, you pretend the creaks of voices, not ghosts, just memories showing up to remind you. You've been here before, you've made it through worse. Even if it's a lie, it helps. And the wind talks in riddles. You stop trying to understand it, you just let it pass through, like grief, like weather. Sometimes someone tells a story. It's never funny, not really, but the room gets a little warmer when people talk. Words become heat. Memories become light. You ration them carefully, like sugar or batteries. No one wants to run out. You forget your face. There are no mirrors here, just reflections in ice or glass, blurry, shifting, half true. You start to think of yourself as movement, not appearance, a presence, a sound in the dark. That's what survival does. It strips you down, and what's left is something sharper, simpler, less beautiful maybe, but more real. And that realness? It's the only thing that still feels solid, the only thing the cold can't take. You stop counting days, not because you forget, but because numbers lie. Numbers promise patterns. Promises are dangerous. You live by sensation now, how thick the air is, how your fingers move slower in the morning, how silence has its own texture. There's no room for calendars, no more almost there, just here, just still here. You learn to measure time in stranger ways, the sound of boots on metal, the way someone coughs after sleeping, the colour of the sky when it shifts from grey to grey-blue to not quite black. Time becomes a loop, not a line, but it moves. It does move, and when it does, you move with it. Not forward, just deeper. You learn not to resist it. Resistance burns energy, and energy is gold now. Even your dreams change. They're less about escape, more about function, fixing, finding, carrying. They're not wishes anymore, they're practice. Training simulations for the world you wake into. You wake up tired, but also grateful. The dream didn't lie. The real is worse, but at least it's consistent. The people around you become outlines filled with intention. You don't know their middle names, you barely remember their voices before this, but you know how they breathe when they're scared. You know how they hold their tools. You know which ones go quiet before a storm. That's what trust is now. Not history, but behaviour. Not who they were, but how they endure. You think you'd die for them. Maybe not out of love, out of necessity, out of some cold, sacred sense of balance. If someone has to fall, let it be you. That thought doesn't scare you anymore. In a place like this, sacrifice isn't tragic, it's currency, and you've come to terms with that. Sometimes someone sings. No melody, just tone, just hum. It doesn't fix anything, but it softens the edges, makes the steel walls feel a little less sharp, makes the night feel like it's listening. And when you sleep, if you sleep, you hold on to that hum like it's a rope, a way back, or a way through. You don't flinch anymore, not at the sounds, not at the dark, not even when the ground shakes, just a little, like it's thinking about remembering something terrible. You've trained yourself out of the jump, out of the panic. Panic is a luxury now, a rich man's sport. You breathe, slow, count 1, 2, mouth stays shut, hands stay ready. You used to think being calm meant being in control. Now you know better. Now you know calm is what happens when there's no control left to lose. When everything has already gone sideways, and the only thing left to choose is your posture. You eat less now, but you taste more. Every bite is a decision, every swallow a transaction. Even the smallest things demand respect. Crumbs, drops, salt. Hunger sharpens the senses, dulls the pride. You thank the food, whether it's good or not, whether it even feels like food at all. And somehow, that gratitude doesn't feel fake. It feels earned. There's a map in your head, not drawn, felt. A memory of footsteps and turns, the squeak in one stair, the spot where the air goes colder. You could move through this place blind, and sometimes you almost do. Your body goes where it knows to go. Your brain follows later. You've stopped looking for the exit, not because you've given up, but because you've learned. There's no out anymore, only forward, only through. It's not a trap if you become part of it. It's not a cage if you stop rattling the bars and start learning the layout. Sometimes you hear laughter, not yours, not close, but it echoes like it belongs to someone who remembers something you don't. For a second, it sounds like the world's still turning, like something survived out there that can still laugh. And you wonder, maybe that's the bravest sound of all, a laugh, in a place like this. You don't chase the sound, but you don't forget it either. You found a mirror once, cracked, leaning against a door that wouldn't open. You looked. You didn't expect to, but you did. Just a glance, just long enough to see what the place had made of you. Your face didn't look scared. It didn't look angry either. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that takes years to grow. The kind that survives long after the noise leaves. Your eyes were still yours. That surprised you. There were marks on your skin you didn't remember getting. A line across the jaw, a bruise fading into the collar, dust where sweat used to be. You reached out to touch the glass and it didn't feel cold, just dry, like the air between you and your reflection was tired of trying to feel anything at all. You didn't smash the mirror. You thought about it, but you didn't. Something told you to let it be, let it watch, let it remember. The days don't stack right anymore. You sleep when you can, but dreams don't come easy. And when they do, they aren't dreams, not really. Just fragments. A hallway you don't recognize. A voice that used to mean something. A sound like a door closing forever and far away. You've stopped asking what time it is. The clock on the wall hasn't ticked since you got here. Still, you glance at it sometimes. Habit, hope, something in between. You've learned to read silence like a language, the rhythm of nothing, the weight of pause, the difference between a place that's merely empty and one that's waiting. The difference matters, one you can rest in, the other you better leave quick. You keep moving, you keep your breath low, your ears open, your back never to the door. Because even though you've learned the rules, that doesn't mean they won't change again. They always do. There was a room once that looked just like your bedroom growing up. Same peeling posters, same crack in the ceiling, even smelled the same. Old books, stale air, that quiet stillness only childhood rooms seem to keep. You stepped in without thinking, and for a second the years fell away like dust. There was a bed, your bed. You sat on it. It held your weight like it used to. You almost let your guard down. Then the light blinked. Not a flicker, not random. A blink. Like something watching, breathing, waiting for you to settle in and forget where you were. You stood up. You left. You didn't look back. It's funny how comfort can be the most dangerous thing in here. Sometimes you think the place wants to be understood, not escaped, not solved, just seen, as if it's been here too long without anyone really noticing it. Like it's tired of being background noise. It leaves you things, pages, whispers, rooms that mimic your memories down to the last chipped mug. You can't tell if it's trying to help you or hurt you in a way that feels personal, and maybe that's worse. Because if it knows you, if it remembers, then you're not just walking through it. You're part of it now. A story being written in dust and cracks and long hallways. You walk slower these days. Not from fear, from something heavier. Something like understanding. There's no map for where you're going. Just doors and choices and the sound of your own footsteps fading behind you. You found a staircase going down forever.